In I'm missing a book. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Bohdi and welcome to my reading nook. Now, before we start, in the last couple of videos you would have heard a faint humming noise in the background. That's because my air conditioner is on. Now, it is hot in Sydney. It is very hot in Sydney. At the moment it's 31 degrees, meaning 31 degrees Celsius, and then tomorrow it's 38 degrees, so I'm dying, literally dying. Anyway, getting to the point of this video, back in August I filmed a video that was to do with, I called it a forced book haul because it was all the books that I was required to buy for uni that I was going to be studying over the semester. Now, this video makes me a little bit anxious because my videos go straight to Twitter when I upload them, and my two teachers that taught me these classes and taught me these books follow me on Twitter. So if you both watch this, I'm sorry. But when I posted that video back in August, a lot of people said, I want to know your opinion on this book, I want to know your opinion on that book. So I'm going to go through the books that I finished, some of the books that I didn't finish, and just talk about my experiences with them. So we'll start with narrative in the novel. So the first book is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Now, Mrs. Dalloway follows the story of Clarissa Dalloway and basically a day in the life of everyone in the story that is converging to go to Clarissa Dalloway's party. Now, it follows two main protagonists, which is Septimus and Clarissa, but it also, the way that the book is told, it jumps from focalizer to focalizer to focalizer to, you know, different narrators literally every other sentence. Like, it's very difficult to follow along with. Now, when I first read this, I had to listen to the audiobook because I could not focus enough to read it. And when I got to school, or when I got to uni, the teacher said, you know, what did everyone think? Did everyone enjoy it? You know, let me know your opinions. And me being me, I kind of thrust my hand up into the air before anyone could speak and said I hated it. I read on Goodreads that it was great. People let me down. They lied to me. It wasn't great. It was terrible. It was god-awful. I hated it. But then, after actually studying it and discussing it for an hour that week and then an hour the next week, I developed a really deep appreciation for what this book is actually about. Now, at the base level, yes, it's about a woman who throws a party, and then an ex turns up, and then there's this other guy who, you know, is essentially insane. And, like, it's a very straightforward story, but the symbolism, the hidden meanings that are interlaid in everything, it's a really potent, really deep book. Now, I think one of my issues was, you know, I sat down to read and enjoy this, thinking it would be enjoyable, and it simply, that's not what you read this book for. You read this book intending to look at it with that analytical, academic perspective, or that academic mind, to, you know, be able to gain the meaning from it rather than sit down and enjoy it as a normal story. So ultimately, in retrospect, looking back on it, I am thankful that I read it and I can appreciate it for what it is, but I personally didn't enjoy reading it. Ultimately, I'd probably give this 3.5 stars out of 5. So, yeah. The next book is Julian Barnes, A History of the World in 10.5 chapters. This was another book that I got to class and I was like, this is god-awful. And essentially it was, until I had to write an essay on it. And then when I started rereading it, I thought it was freaking hilarious. It follows... The book itself is a bit of a misnomer, meaning, you know, it says a history of the world in 10.5 chapters. It's not chapters, it's 10.5 short stories. You know, I think I let myself down going into it being like, yes, chapters, I'm expecting a continuous story. It wasn't that at all. But, you know, it follows a lot of intertextual references to stories that are socially well known. So from things like, you know, Noah's Ark to the Titanic to the Amazon, etc. and so on. Now, I didn't finish this. No one hurt me. But from what I did read, especially when I did my essay on it, it was really funny. And it's something that I actually do want to sit down and read now, rather than, you know, store it away and never read it ever again. Now, again, I don't think it's like the most amazing book in the world. I thought the hype was a bit much, but in saying that, there's definitely value in there. The next book was, I believe this is the next book, The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara. I didn't finish it. It was a very arduous read. It was interesting, but it took a very long time to even get this far. Now, The People in the Trees follows a young doctor who's named Norton Perina, and he signs up to go on an anthropological expedition to try to locate a lost tribe, a rumoured lost tribe, they don't even know if it exists, on some Micronesian island. Now, the expedition is a success, and there they find a turtle, like a very rare turtle, where if you consume it, you essentially become immortal, but it comes at a cost. And then, long story short, it starts with him being on trial, and he's reflecting on his journeys, as well as the trial that he's on. And it's very intense. It actually came with a trigger warning in my class. The tutor gave us a trigger warning, so yeah, but I really love the writing style, and the narration between, you know, the doctor's assistant and the doctor's perspective coming through the assistant, so you have that unreliable narrator. The fourth book is The Eyre Affair by Jasper Fforde. I actually finished all of this. I really enjoyed this. It was hilarious. I haven't read a funny book like this in a very long time, and I actually want to pick up the rest of the series that this is a part of. Now, it follows a literary detective, Thursday Next. Now, the story is set in 1985, and it's the culture, the society deeply values literature. And I think that anyone who loves reading, so anyone here on BookTube, would really enjoy this, because you'd gain so much more than someone who isn't very well adept at reading. So it follows, you know, London's criminal gangs have moved into the lucrative literary market, and Acheron Hades has been kidnapping characters from works of fiction, holding them ransom, Jane Eyre, and a couple of other ones. And it's really funny. It talks about really serious issues, like it talks about the Crimean War and stuff like that, but it's done in such a hilarious way, and it's so adventurous. And, you know, I didn't actually finish it by the end of semester. I had, like, you know, 5 or so chapters left, but I still sat down and finished it because it was just so enjoyable. Okay, the next one, Nobody is Ever Missing by Catherine Lacey. I read this book was droning on. That's all I can say for it. It droned on and on and on. Like, if I had to give it a rating, it would probably be like 2 stars, maybe, at a stretch. It just droned on and on and on. And while it's realistic in regards to, you know, this woman suffering from a mental breakdown, and, like, you know, how in that moment life feels like it's droning on and on and on, it was just so, nothing happened. It was so anticlimactic. It was the same kind of tone the whole way out, and then you'd hope something would happen, and then it didn't. And, you know, it follows the story of Illyria, who books a one-way flight to New Zealand, ditches her husband, and essentially goes on a journey or an adventure of self-discovery, which she never actually completes because she doesn't discover anything. So she, you know, goes hitchhiking and meets different people and blah blah blah, and it was just so, like, we get the point, move on, kind of thing. You know, when you read a book and you're just like, okay, we're waiting for some action to happen, we're waiting for anything to happen. No, it didn't happen. And to be honest, it felt like I just suffered through the whole thing. So I didn't enjoy it at all. I would not recommend it. but in any capacity. So the final book from narrative in the novel that I had forgot to pick up was The Edible Woman by Margaret Atwood. This was probably one of my favourite books from semester, aside from Stardust. I thought it was really interesting, and it's the first book by Margaret Atwood that I've read, because I was meant to read another one in another class and I never did. But I really enjoyed it. It follows the story of Marion, who is essentially your ordinary plain Jane who's waiting to get married, and to her fiance Peter. And at first everything's going well, but then essentially her inner self is sabotaging everything that she's doing, and she develops an eating disorder where she literally cannot stomach anything, being she can't stomach what's happening in her life, as well as she cannot stomach actual food. And it was just really interesting to see how this character was so transgressive with feminine ideals and feminine stereotypes, and how it was just a really interesting book, and I would recommend it to anyone who would read it. Now, the interesting thing about this is I actually tweeted Margaret Atwood, and she wished me luck with, you know, it, and she said that I wish I would have behaved a little bit more before writing it, because she wrote this before before second wave feminism actually became a thing, so she was definitely writing ahead of her times. So definitely good. Okay, so first book was Stardust by Neil Gaiman, and wow, that comes up really blue when it's like purple. Anyway, Stardust follows the story of young Tristan Thorn, who lives in Wall, and he makes a promise to his beloved crush Victoria, saying, you know, there's a shooting star over there and I'm going to go collect it for you. I'm going to go get this star for you in exchange for your love. And then, you know, through going and finding it, the star is not actually a star, it becomes a person, and it follows that story there. Now, I had to watch the movie as well as read the book, and I'm so glad that I read the book before the movie, because I thought the movie was fucking awful. Which I made very prevalent and prominent in my discussions in class, but I'll save that for another video, because I want to do a movie versus book series, and Stardust will be one of them. Interesting. Now, some of the flaws were the character of Tristan Thorn is a dweeb. He's not likeable in my opinion. He's just a little dork who is just kind of dweebish. There's nothing relatable about him. Victoria, his crush, is something else, and she's kind of irrelevant. There weren't many standout characters that I was like, yes, I like them, but they all, when they blended together, told a really interesting story. Okay, so the next book is The Wee Free Men by Terry Pratchett, and it tells the story of Tiffany Aching, who is a young witch, or wants to become a witch, and she goes on this adventure to save her brother from an evil queen who has kidnapped her, and on her journey she comes across what's known as the Nak-Nak-Feegle, which are young little pixie gnome elves type things. And I really liked it. It was nice to see, especially in a children's book, a young female hero. But then by the end of it, I kind of have question with how much of a hero she actually was, and how they kind of just undid everything they built up in the story. But it was interesting. It was a quick read. I read it in a day alongside Stardust, which I read in another day. So yeah, I definitely recommend that too. The next one is Pookie Is Not My Boyfriend by Stephen Herrick. Now, I read this twice, I believe, and I had to write an essay on it, and it was okay. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Like, it was okay. It's a verse novel. It goes through different characters' perspectives. It follows, you know, the stories of Class 6A. So it follows, you know, Mick, who's the school captain, his younger brother Jacob, Laura, Pete, Selena, Cameron, some of the teachers. Overall, it was interesting to read, but it was a bit like airy-fairy, surface level type thing. There wasn't anything that was like groundbreaking or amazing that makes me go, yes, everyone should read that. So overall, like, hooray for it, but whatever. And then final book is Mortal Engines by Philip Reeves. Peter Jackson, the director of Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies, is currently directing this. Now, I didn't actually finish this. I got up to chapter 8 and realised I didn't have to write about it for an essay, and I wouldn't write about it in my exam, so I kind of stopped bothering with it because I wanted to dedicate myself to other things. Now, I found it quite boring, because it's very dystopian, sci-fi type, but very mechanical machinery. So, in the distant future, cities on wheels fight each other for survival. As London pursues a small town, young apprentice Tom is flung out into the wastelands where a terrifying cyborg begins to hunt him down. And it was just interesting, but not like, yes, I'm gonna, you know, keep reading it. Like, I probably will not finish this. I have no intentions to finish this, and I'll probably give it away eventually. One thing I did like, though, was one of the main protagonists, not Tom, the female, is Hester, and she's pretty badass, so I liked that from what I read. So, have you read any of these books? I'd be very interested to know your opinions. I'm glad to have a discussion with you down below in the comment section. Aside from that, there's not really much else to say, so thanks for watching and happy reading. I'm either inserting this clip at the beginning or the end, but I just wanted to make a quick point to say that I now have an uploading schedule. I'll be uploading every Monday and Friday. There may possibly be a video in between those days as well, because I have so much free time at the moment, but I'm aiming to do Mondays and Fridays because they work best for me, and hopefully they will also work really well with my university schedule. So yeah, have a look out every Monday and Friday, so subscribe below, and you know, if you want a notification anytime I upload, please hit that little bell thing as well. And yeah, see you next time. Bye!